All right, everyone, let's dive right in, shall we? Today's deep dive, well, it's a heavy one. We're tackling knife crime in the UK.
A very serious issue.
It is. And to guide us, we've got this really powerful paper by Edwin Duggan.
Oh, yes.
Now, he's a human rights advocate, and he's been campaigning against knife violence for quite a while.
Right.
So his paper, it's called Knife Crime on the Rise in the UK, and it's a personal analysis, you know.
It is.
And he's using the latest data all the way up to August 2024 to kind of show us, like, what's really going on.
Yes.
So we're going to unpack some pretty alarming statistics today.
For sure.
We're going to examine some tragic cases like the recent Southport stabbings.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're going to try to really get to the heart of this whole complex issue.
It is a very complex issue.
But thankfully, we've got an expert here with us.
Oh, stop it.
Who can help us break it all down.
Well, I'll do my best. Duggan, he brings this unique perspective. It's a blend of, legal expertise, but also firsthand experience. He's not just, reading reports from some ivory tower. He's out there actively trying to prevent knife crime.
Right. And he really starts things off strong with these hard-hitting numbers.
Yeah, the statistics are pretty stark.
So in 2023 alone, there were 49,489 recorded knife offenses in the UK.
Wow.
And that's a 7% jump from the previous year.
It's a significant increase.
Now, 7%, it might not sound like much on its own.
Right.
But it's significant because, when you compare it to the overall crime rate, that's remained pretty stable.
Right. That's an important point.
So this shows us that knife offenses, they're specifically on the rise.
Yeah.
It's not just a general increase in crime across the board.
It's targeted in a sense. And what's even more worrying is that robberies where knives were used, those surged by 20%.
Oh, wow.
So it's not just about threats anymore. This points to a willingness to actually cause harm. It's a disturbing trend.
It is. It's chilling when you think about it. Every single one of those statistics, it represents a real person, someone whose life has been impacted by this violence.
Absolutely. It's easy to forget that amidst all the numbers.
Yeah, we get lost in the data sometimes. But we have to remember those human stories, the people behind the statistics.
Right. And Duggan, he really emphasizes that. He reminds us that these aren't just abstract figures. These are symptoms of deeper societal issues that need to be addressed.
Now, Duggan, he specifically calls out the West Midlands and London as having the highest rates of knife crime.
They do, yes.
So what's going on in those areas? I mean, what could be contributing to this concentration of knife crime?
Well, Duggan, he points to a complex web of factors. Socioeconomic conditions, they definitely play a major role. So we're talking about areas with, higher poverty rates, fewer job opportunities, struggling education systems, things like that.
Okay.
They tend to see more knife crime.
Yeah.
And he's very critical of the austerity measures, the ones that have been implemented in recent years. Mm-hmm. He argues that cuts to social programs, to community resources, it's just made these problems worse.
Yeah, but wouldn't, some people argue that those cuts were necessary?
Oh, of course. And it's a debate that's been going on for a long time. But Duggan's perspective is that those cuts, they've had unintended consequences. They've weakened those support structures that could actually help prevent crime. He believes that investing in these communities, giving young people real opportunities, that's essential to tackling the root of the problem.
So it's not just about having more police officers on the streets then?
Exactly. It's about addressing those underlying causes, those systemic issues. And speaking of the devastating impact of all this, Duggan highlights another really grim statistic. So in the year ending March 2023, a staggering 41% of all homicides in England and Wales, they involved knives.
Wow, 41%.
Yeah, so out of 590 homicides, 244 lives were lost due to stabbings. And this trend, it's not new. Knives have consistently been involved in a huge proportion of homicides for over a decade.
It's heartbreaking. And then, of course, there's the Southport tragedy. That case just shook the entire nation.
It did.
3 young girls, just 6, 7, and 9 years old, brutally murdered.
Horrible.
The Bay King, Elsie Stancombe, and Alice da Silva Aguar.
So young.
I mean, cases like this, they are statistically rare.
Right.
But they create this ripple effect of fear and grief. It extends way beyond just the immediate community.
It does. It impacts everyone. It forces us to confront the vulnerability of children. Children, They make up a small percentage of homicide victims overall, but their deaths are, well, they're just particularly impactful.
They are.
And it raises all these questions about safety in public spaces, even for the youngest members of our society.
It does. And Duggan, he doesn't shy away from those difficult questions. He uses this tragedy, as you said, to really highlight the need for action.
Yeah.
But he also reminds us that focusing solely on law enforcement, it's not enough. We need to dig deeper, understand the root causes.
The why behind it all.
Yeah, that complex web of social and economic factors that can push some young people towards violence.
And that's where his analysis of what drives knife crime, especially among young people, gets really interesting.
So let's talk about those root causes. Where does he suggest we start?
Well, he brings up the influence of drug-related activities, and there's this alarming trend of youth exploitation within these criminal networks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you mean like kids, they're being pressured, like forced into these dangerous situations.
Exactly. And Patrick Green, he's the CEO of the Ben Kinsella Trust.
Yeah.
They're an organization dedicated to combating knife crime. He echoes this point. He says that a lot of young people, they're coerced into carrying knives.
Yeah.
It's to protect those drug operations, not necessarily for their own personal safety.
It's just disturbing to think about kids being like manipulated like that. And I guess it really highlights how important it is to dismantle those criminal networks, right?
Yeah.
And to provide better protection for those vulnerable youth.
Absolutely. And it ties into this broader issue of socioeconomic vulnerability that Duggan discusses. Poverty, lack of educational opportunities, mental health struggles, all of that. It creates this breeding ground for desperation.
Yeah.
And it makes young people much more susceptible to that exploitation we were just talking about.
Yeah. And Duggan, he seems particularly concerned about the impact of austerity measures.
Yeah, he is.
On these communities.
He argues that those cuts to youth services, to police presence, to community support, they've basically eroded this safety net. That could have helped prevent these young people from, falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
And he believes these cuts have actually fueled the problem.
I see. But haven't there been arguments that increased police presence that can sometimes lead to more tension?
Oh, absolutely.
And distrust in communities?
That's a valid concern. And it speaks to that complex relationship between law enforcement and these marginalized communities.
Right.
And Duggan, he acknowledges that. He's not advocating for just a purely punitive approach.
Right.
He thinks there needs to be a balanced approach.
Okay.
That combines targeted enforcement, with that robust community engagement.
Yeah.
And support.
So it's about building trust then, rather than just cracking down.
Precisely. And he mentions Operation Hardy. It's in Bristol.
Okay.
As an example of this balanced approach in action.
Oh, okay. What's unique about that operation?
Well, it focuses on removing weapons from the streets.
Yeah. But
at the same time, it offers support to those at-risk youth. It's about intervention. It's about prevention, not just punishment. And PC Christina Jones, she's involved in the initiative. She talks about how heartbreaking it is encountering children, sometimes as young as 10, carrying knives.
10 years old.
Yeah.
That's just, I can't even imagine.
It's a stark reminder of the harsh realities that these communities face.
Yeah.
And she really emphasizes the importance of collaboration. Police, educators, social workers, healthcare professionals, all working together to create that safety net to catch these kids before, they fall into this abyss of violence.
It sounds like a massive undertaking. So where does legislation fit into all of this?
Well, Duggan, he does acknowledge the role of legislation in combating knife crime. The UK government has implemented bans on certain types of knives, like zombie knives, machetes, the ones that are often associated with youth violence. And the newly elected Labour government, they've pledged to prioritize this.
Okay.
Tackling knife crime and closing those legal loopholes.
So it seems like there is some political will to address this.
Yeah, but Duggan's cautious. He points out that, previous governments, they've made similar promises.
Right.
Without delivering any meaningful change. So he's skeptical about legislation as a standalone solution.
What's his reasoning there?
Well, he argues that while laws can restrict access to those dangerous weapons, they don't address those root causes that we've been talking about.
Right.
Why people choose to carry them in the first place. He believes that real change, it requires a moralistic approach
Okay.
one that actually tackles those underlying social and economic issues that are driving this problem.
So it's about addressing the demand, not just the supply.
Exactly. And he's a really strong advocate for investment in education, mental health services, community programs, things that provide young people with positive alternatives to crime.
Right.
He believes that these preventative measures, they're crucial to breaking that cycle of violence. And this is where his call for a dedicated ministerial office or a commissioner for knife crime prevention comes in.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like he's calling for a more focused effort from the government.
Yeah.
What exactly would this commissioner do?
Well, Duggan, he envisions the commissioner as this central figure who can coordinate efforts across all the different sectors.
Right.
Streamline those strategies, make sure that the resources are being used effectively.
Okay.
He believes that focused leadership is absolutely essential to tackling a problem as complex and as widespread as knife crime.
That's an interesting proposition. It suggests that we need, more of a cohesive, strategic approach rather than just, a patchwork of these individual initiatives.
Right, right.
But even with the best strategies, even with all that in place, it still feels like a daunting task.
It is.
What makes him believe that real change is actually possible? I mean, it's a big question, right? But Duggan, he seems to find hope in this idea that it's not just like a law enforcement problem.
Right.
It's a societal issue, And he says that real change, it's possible when we all kind of step up and take responsibility, when communities come together to support their young people.
Yeah, and that's what's so compelling about his paper, right? He doesn't just like point fingers and say, here are the problems.
Yeah.
He actually challenges us to think about solutions.
Right.
Like what role can communities play? What long-term solutions could actually address those deep-rooted issues that we keep talking about?
Yeah, he's asking us to kind of shift our perspective, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's like moving away from, blame and towards more like collective action.
Exactly. Yeah. He wants us to get past this us versus them mentality and realize that we all have, a stake in this, in creating these safer communities for everyone.
For everyone, yeah.
And that even seemingly small actions, they can really contribute to a much larger solution.
So what are some of those like small actions? Like what can people actually do to make a difference?
Well, he suggests, getting involved in your community.
Okay.
Like volunteering at a local youth center, supporting those organizations that are working to prevent knife crime.
Okay.
Even just having those open and honest conversations with the young people in your life.
Yeah.
These might seem like small things, but they can create these ripples of change.
I think what really sticks with me is Duggan's emphasis on providing young people with those positive alternatives.
Yes.
He talks about, education, job opportunities, mental health support, all vital
essential pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, it's about creating that culture where young people, they feel valued, heard, supported.
Yeah.
Where they can actually see a future for themselves.
Right.
One that doesn't involve violence.
And he leaves us with this really powerful question, doesn't he?
He does.
He asks, what will it take to build a future where young people feel safe and empowered to choose a path free from violence?
It's a question that really makes you think, right? It challenges us to look at ourselves, to look at our communities and ask what we can do.
So can we do
to create that kind of future?
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've talked about the statistics, we've examined all the complexities, explored the potential solutions, and it's a lot to process,
It is.
It can feel pretty heavy.
It's definitely a sobering topic.
Yeah.
But amidst all that, all that darkness, Duggan's message, I think it does offer a glimmer of hope.
It does.
He reminds us that change is possible.
Yeah.
But it takes all of us. It requires us to have those difficult conversations, to challenge our own biases, and to really work together to create that safer future for absolutely everyone.
He reminds us that we all have a role to play in this.
We do.
And even those small acts, of kindness and support, they can actually make a real difference.
They can.
He leaves us with this powerful image of a future, right?
Yeah.
Where tragedies like Southport, they become a distant memory, and young people, they feel safe, and empowered to choose a path that's free from violence.
The world we should all be striving for.
It is. And on that note of hope and collective action, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thank you all for joining us as we explored this really complex and challenging issue.
It was a pleasure.
And we hope that this conversation, it's giving you some new insights.
Yeah.
And maybe even inspired you to take some action in your own communities.
Absolutely.
Remember, knowledge is power.
It is.
And together, we can make a difference.
We can.
So until next time.
Yes.
Stay curious, stay informed.
Stay engaged.
And stay engaged. And we'll see you on the next deep dive.
See you then.